Dear listeners, this episode is about suicide and may be triggering to some people. If you feel an intense physical or emotional reaction, I would like you to press pause and take a break. I would also like you to reach out for people that you trust and to share these feelings with them. It is okay to reach out for a counselor. It is perfectly fine to reach out for help. If you need crisis support, please do not lose hope. Reach out to your local crisis support hotline. If you do not know what to do, reach out to a friend. Hello and welcome to Getting Naked with Happiness with me, Stephen Liu. Each episode, my guests will share personal stories of resilience and bear their emotions and minds openly. Learn from the wisdoms that they have gained through their journeys and create your very own well-being toolkit. Today we have a special guest all the way from Ireland, and her name is Dierdre. She is a world-class mind wellness expert, a life coach, author, and master change agent. And she facilitates transformation at the deepest level in her consultations using her stress solution system. So she works with people from health conditions to physical ailments, from emotional issues to relationship challenges, from drug, alcohol, and weight addictions to stress and suicidal thoughts. Deirdre has achieved sustained successful results. And she's really good because she's been there, done it, and her personal journey has become her professional passion. Her deepest desire is to share her expertise in the latest cutting edge science of transformation so that people can really have a better life. Deirdre begins by telling us about her roots.
I grew up the eldest of five children here in Northern Ireland, and throw into the mix not great emotional coping skills, not much emotional intelligence, a war. We have conflict here. It's still being worked through. But when I was 11 years of age, the conflict that has been over 300 years old in Ireland raised its head again. So my teenage years, I knew what it was like for, bombs and bullets and that kind of thing. So that's the context of my life. So on the outside, I had everything. I'd been educated. I have an honors degree in education. I had been an air hostess for a while. I had traveled the world. I haven't been to Singapore yet, but I had trekked in the Himalayas. I had climbed Kilimanjaro. I had done all kinds. I'd run 3 marathons in my life: the New York Marathon twice and Boston Marathon once. I had been married to a very lovely man, and so on the outside, I looked like I had everything, but on the inside, I was running on empty. And my parents owned a family business, and they built it. They built it from nothing. My mother was the eldest of 10, and my father was the eldest of 4, and his father left. So he became the surrogate spouse. He became the father of the family. They were both working class people with no education. And but they had a burning desire to improve their life, so they built this small family business, a furniture business, and we on my 7th birthday we moved in above it. I was born on Friday the 13th of April, which is supposed to be unlucky, and on Friday the 13th of April, my 7th birthday, they opened the family business and we moved in above it. And then the trouble started, and they sent me to boarding school because they wanted the best for me. And while all the intentions were so good, the impact of that on me was to build a sense of rejection, loneliness, fear. I was raised by nuns. I was educated by the nuns. So religion, the Catholic religion, played a big part in my life. And of course, I lived in the time of corporal punishment. So I if I wasn't afraid of the teachers, then I could be afraid of my father. He was a wonderful man, very successful man, but his best coping skill was anger, which I now know is fear, and ultimately alcohol. And in the end, a tortured soul, he took his own life. So I loved him very much, and I had made it my mission to save my father. But as we lowered the coffin into the cold January earth 19 years ago, I had only one truth, and that was that I had failed. But what I say now to my clients, what if the lowest point is actually the turning point? And even though it was the hardest moment of my life, and it confirmed for me that I was a failure. And
on which part you thought that you were a failure in respect to your father's suicide?
Well, I loved him, and I had done everything to try and save him. He would be what I describe as an avoidaholic, which we all are. So we avoid emotions, and we avoid the pain, and we fill it with something. So he filled it with work and ambition, and he built his business from scratch and became very successful. But it's kind of like keeping a beach ball underwater. You can't do it. And his dependence on alcohol accelerated as the time went on. And I couldn't cope with the pain of watching him self-destruct. So I tried to fix it. I was the fixer, and I tried to find the answers for him. So I had made it my mission to save my father. And well, the fact that ultimately he took his own life was proof for me that I really was a failure. Now, my failure feelings had come long before that because of all the pressure in school, the pressure in boarding school, the pressure to do well. I didn't do well enough. Even though I did get I have an honours degree in education, I never felt like, it took me a long time to get there. And so the feelings of failure were built from way back in the day. And then my dad's death just compounded it and proved that actually I was right. So, but what I say is, so that really moved the journey forward. My searching for answers, the search, why did my father have to die? Are we forever doomed to be trapped by the traumas of the past? Is death the ultimate only solution for pain? So then I did get answers. I became a life coach. I studied neuro-linguistic programming. I studied faster EFT, which is the tapping process. I was in 12-step recovery myself for 10 years. In the Al-Anon, people are familiar with AA for alcoholics. Well, I joined Al-Anon, which is for family and friends of alcoholics. And even though today it is my opinion, based on my experience, that people are not alcoholic. It's not why the alcohol, it's why the pain. I think alcoholism shows up as a symptom. Overuse of alcohol is a symptom of the source, which is the pain of the past. So I had done all this, but then nothing saved my father. He died. So as I say, that set me on my journey. And then my personal journey became my professional passion. I started to help people myself. And, as I shared with you before, I remember, the first check that I got, the first time I got paid by a client. And, I pinned the check to the notice board and I said, "What do you think of that, Dan?" And I swear to God, I heard him say, "Dierdre, have I taught you nothing about cash?" Yeah.
And Coming back to the part of your dad's suicide, were there signs of suicide from inhibited or exhibited from him prior to his death?
Yes, yes. The suicide was just the end of a long saga of pain and hurt. As I said, my father was a successful businessman. He worked and worked and worked, and when the work stopped working, and he couldn't work so hard, then the use of alcohol accelerated. So in the end, my father couldn't be sober. Every day my father started, today I'm going to be sober. And by lunchtime, he was drinking. And by 6 o'clock, he was, unconscious. And then he would sleep, and then he would get up and start again the next day. And so all of that was all in the lead up. And he used to talk about suicide at times. He would say, I'm going to kill myself. But he might have said it, I don't know, once every 6 months or something like that. But it was in the mix of all the drama beforehand, and interestingly, my father died on the 21st of January, and the 21st of January is apparently the day that you're most likely to take your own life. That's what they say. Wow. Now, I don't know whether that's worldwide or whether that's Europe or, I live in a Christian community, so we celebrate Christmas. So, here where I live, there's all the hype for Christmas. There's, it's a time for family. All of those emotions are running high. And then there's January. Well, January, Christmas is over. The only thing you've got is your debt from your overspending and Christmas. You've got the hangover from the excess alcohol, food, everything. So it sounds like 21st of January would be a pretty good day to kill yourself. That makes sense to me. But I see suicide as another coping skill. It's a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Yes.
You don't need to do it. I work with suicidal people all the time. So in the weeks leading up to my father's death, he was setting things in place. My boyfriend of the time, he spoke to him and took him out for a drive. Of course, we only saw this all in retrospect, but he took him out for a drive and said, make sure and take care of Dierdre, because he wanted me taken care of. I was the only one not married, and the rest were married, and he was given instructions to my boyfriend at the time to take care of me. There were little signs that you could only ever have seen afterwards, because actually we used to dread Christmas because it was the time when my father really took off with drinking. But here was this Christmas was the best Christmas we had in such a long time. My father was in great form. He was good. Now, he was still drinking, but he wasn't drinking so much. He wasn't arguing with my mum. He was being kind to her. He was being loving to her. He loved all of us. And it was the best Christmas we had in a long time. What I know subsequently from the work that I've studied is, and speaking and talking with a lot of people who have attempted suicide and failed because they're still here, is that suicide is an option. It's a relief. It's a get out. It gives you a solution. And when you have the solution, then somehow life becomes a bit more manageable. So I'm sure people who have dealt with other suicidal family members will know this, that, why? Because they were actually good. So when I subsequently worked with people now who have been suicidal, they're in so much pain that this seems like a good idea. So contrary to the thought, oh, it's awful, it's awful, it's awful, I'm going to put a gun to my head, I'm going to hang myself. Actually, their mind is actually in a sort of peace. before they do it. This has been my experience of talking to people who are suicidal.
If I could share an experience, and thank you for what you just shared. I think it's very powerful. And that reminded me of an experience when I was starting the podcast a few months ago. I was on a crossroad wondering whether I should continue with the podcast or whether I should not. But I was also motivated by the mission of I wanted to raise awareness in mental health and also have these conversations. Mm-hmm. But it was difficult because it takes a lot of time and energy and skills that I did not have. And because you might be aware that I run a school, the School of Positive Psychology. We train psychology and psychotherapy education to adult learners. And there was a student, and she had just completed her last module in counseling. And it was the end of the semester. And at the end, she gave a hug to the lecturer and thanked the lecturer for doing such a wonderful job. She has learned a lot about counseling and it has changed her life. And then she's looking forward to her new future. And the very evening after the class, she took her life. And so at the end of the class, she was happy. There was a change, there was a shift in her. And that was also one of the, I would say, impetus of me wanting to continue with the podcast, because to raise awareness, as like what you say, that there are people who have suicidal tendencies, and sometimes they may not be bleak or depressed. They may show signs of the opposite because they have planned it out. Yeah.
You know, part of my story was that the year after my father died, I was in 12-step recovery, and I was invited to speak at an AA Al-Anon conference in Belfast in Northern Ireland. And I remember the day that that was the year of the searching. Like, it was 8 months after my father had died. And 12-step recovery, my Al-Anon community had saved my life. They absolutely, I had coping skills and I had community that helped me to survive that time. So this was my giving back. And I went to the Al-Anon meeting, and I was going to tell everybody how it was and how I was going to give a great speech. And on the morning, as was common in my life at that time, I would either feel great or I would plummet. I would go into the depths of despair. And on that morning, I was so bad. I thought, I cannot get up in front of people and speak today because I just feel so crap. But I had to do it. I had to show this is the honesty. This is the truth. Mm-hmm. So I stood up and spoke about how bad I felt. And I didn't understand why my father took his own life. And I was so angry. Why did God take him? I was sick of listening to other AA members saying, I was in the depths of despair and this, God came into my life and la, la, la. And I thought, well, why didn't he come into my father's life? What do you mean? Why should you? And this was the way I felt. And I shared this that day. And of course I ended up crying. I was in, and there was silence in the room because the pain of the aftermath of suicide is so awful. And it was a raw, open moment. But anyway, we came to I don't know, I got a standing ovation. People applauded, and because honesty is so powerful. And that's why I love the name of your podcast, Naked. We need to get naked with this stuff. And, life is not packed, it's not boxed and packaged like an Amazon parcel arriving. That's not the way life is. And so anyway, after the meeting, the girl came over to me and the organizer said, I wonder if you could give this lady a ride home. Could you give her a ride home? And there had been this little tiny leprechaun of a woman sitting in the front row, and she had shared that she had been married to her husband for 40 years and that she was still living with active alcoholism. And I remember having the thought at the time, why? Are you insane? Why would you stay with somebody who's still, I had that thought. So here we are, the meeting's over, and the organizer said, could you take Mary home? Could you give her a ride home? And I said, sure. So I have a big Jeep. She gets into the little pixie leprechaun gets into my Jeep. I help her up into it, and we're driving up home. And she said, Deirdre, well done today on your speech and your talk. And I said, yeah, okay, yeah. And she said, I had a sister, and I loved her very much. And she took her own life. And she said, we shared almost every day. We spent every day together. And this day it was her birthday. And we went out. I bought her a birthday cake. We went out for dinner. And I said goodbye to her. And she went home and took her own life. And she said, something, Deirdre? You know what I learned that day? That sometimes the answer is, there is no answer. And I'm telling you, Stefan, up until that moment, that 8 months had been frenetic in my head. I needed an answer. I needed an answer, and I'd gone everywhere looking for it. The closest I'd ever come to was a girl who had attempted it, and she had 3 young children, and I had said to her, she put a rope up and tried to hang herself. And I said to her, where were your children? Where were your children in your mind at that point? And she said, I just thought they'd be better off without me. And so I learned 2 things that day. One, to make peace with whatever is happening. The answer is, there is no answer sometimes. We don't know. Your whole life is driven by your trauma. My life is somehow to find an answer for the traumas of my life.
Yep.
But sometimes there is no answer. And something, there's a great relief in that. I don't know why. I honestly can tell you that 100%, I don't know exactly why my father made that decision. I can hazard a pretty informed guess at it. And I help people now who otherwise have been suicidal, because it drove me to find answers to something. But ultimately, none of us have the complete answer. So for me, what I say to people who have been traumatized by another's suicide, because that's what happened to me. I didn't take my own life, but I was left with the aftermath. And it's about making peace with what is, which pans out into all aspects of life.
I think that raised a lot of self-awareness, because by saying that sometimes there isn't an answer, because I think that's a powerful statement. It reminds me of a question that people like to ask, because if we keep asking ourselves a question, then our mind will do its parts to rush forward to answer that question. So if you ask ourselves a negative question, why is my life filled with suffering, or why is this happening to me, or why is the world so unfair, and every part of our mind will rush to answer and give you that assumptions to answer that question. But instead, what you're saying right now is to start with not a question, but maybe start with an answer that is, maybe there's no answer.
There's no answer. And that's your answer.
And that's the answer.
Yeah.
And there's a powerful answer, because it brings upon self-acceptance.
Yes. Yeah. And the other thing that was so beautiful about it was, you don't know where the answer's going to come from. Like, here was this wee woman sitting like a little pixie in this big Jeep,
A little
And she just,
pixie.
and we were talking about alcoholism. We were talking, she never mentioned anything about her sister's suicide when we were in the meeting.
Yeah.
But little did I know that she had an answer for me, and it was a beautiful moment that absolutely shifted the direction of my life. Up until that, I couldn't make my life work in any way. Now, it wasn't over, and I had, lots more seeking, but that was a pivotal moment that allowed me to breathe. Like we talked about fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
When you're in stress, you don't breathe. You actually stop breathing. But in that moment when she said that to me, I just exhaled. I just went, okay, maybe I'll never figure that out.
I think it all started because you had that speech and you were being vulnerable. You were being authentic. You embrace your emotions and you share it. And by doing so, it was healing for not just for you, but for the people who are listening to you. And that prompted that conversation with the lady who shared her story, to share her connection with you. I think that's amazing. That's how social connections and magic happen, right?
Well, science has proven that we are all connected, So this is what, I was working with a client this morning and she's arguing and fighting with her sister. And she keeps blaming the sister. The sister did this. And I am saying to her, but when you make the change, now this morning was the first time she said she was starting to see it differently. So we've been working for a couple of weeks and she said, I'm starting to see it differently. And I said, and the interaction between you and your sister has got to change. It can't be the same because you're not the same. And it answers that question for us, if you're in a difficult situation.
Yeah.
This is what I say, Stefan. The solution to every problem is the same. How can I look at this differently?
Okay.
That's a good question to ask. If the mind is the great Googler, we're Googling all the time. So as soon as you ask the question, why does this happen to me? Why me? Poor me? Why? But if you ask yourself the question, how can I look at this differently?
It's like reframing, right? The way
that's what it is. Absolutely. It's a reframe of the situation. And some of them are easy and some of them take longer. But the practice is to do it when it's not so difficult, so that when the suicide happens or the trauma happens or the divorce happens or the accident happens or the thing that we don't want to happen happens, then our mind is ready in a better way to deal with the challenges of life.
So are you also saying that we can start reframing in smaller dosages, or we can start reframing, you train our mind in reframing in smaller steps, so that progressively when something big happens, we know we have acquired the skill of reframing, so it will be easier?
When I was at school, when I was all that time boarding school, I had a flashback there as you were speaking. And I remember we used to debate. On Friday night was debate night.
Okay.
And there was the pro and the cons. So what they did you had to pick a topic and you had to argue for it. And then quite often what they would do is the following week, they would take the same subject and they would put you on the con so that you had to defend the opposite view.
Yeah. Okay.
And you could do that with kids and have great fun, where, you could defend, I don't know, vegetarianism and say you're killing the animals and you really get into that frame of mind and you see that's the answer, and then training your mind. So then you go the opposite and say, well, if we're vegetarian, then there'll be no cows. because they'll not be here and they get a chance at life or whatever. It's training your mind to see. And what I do want, it's a really successful way that I work with clients, because if I have even a person who's been abused, sexually abused, that my ultimate goal, not at the beginning, it's a journey, but my ultimate goal is to get the person to be able to stand in the shoes of the perpetrator, of the abuser, and see what was it like for them, not because we are forgiving them, but because we are empowering ourselves. That's the reason for the new perspective, so that you are the winner. You are the person who wins. Well, does that make sense?
I need to go a bit deeper on that. So what you're saying right now is, in the work you do, you also ask your client to take on the perspectives of a perpetrator.
Yes.
The reason for doing so is not to forgive the perpetrator, but is to raise their awareness. How is this related to being a winner?
It's amazing what we're actually, scientifically what we're doing is creating new neural pathways in the brain. So if you're 11 years of age and an uncle does something he shouldn't do, so now you're 25 and life's not working, you're 35 and you can't get it to work. So you come to see me, but you've had, since you were 11 to 35, your brain has been operating in a certain way. It's been going down the path of, now it could be the path of shame, or it could be the path of anger. It could be the path of victimhood. It could be guilt. A lot of people who have been abused blame themselves. So you have created these neural pathways in your brain. And it's my job to help you by reframing the situation to create new neural pathways where you are no longer the victim. So that's the only intention of the exercise, because the abuser in your mind is not the abuser. The abuser in your mind is the thought of the abuser. So all we're doing is changing the thought in your head. The abuser is not here. The abuser is a hologram in your mind. And that's where the power is.
For example, if a person is traumatized over a past event and they cannot forgive the perpetrator, but what you're suggesting here is that this exercise, in terms of the sessions that you facilitate, will allow them to reframe their perspectives in order to break the association they have from being abused, so that the reframing process can occur. So this leads to the next question is, can they do it on their own, or they need to come and see you, a professional, to help them to transform? Is there some sort of awareness, self-help activity that you can advise on this?
That's what the stress solution system is about. So it first of all gives you the information about how the brain works, how we think in pictures, how the memories are stored. Memories are stored 5 ways: visually, auditorily, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory. What you see, what you hear, what you taste, what you feel, and what you smell. And they go into a memory bank, which I call the black box recorder. And that's the unconscious mind. Now, the unconscious mind is also known as the intelligent idiot.
The intelligent idiot.
It's intelligent because it's keeping you safe and it collects all this information, but it's an idiot because it doesn't know that you're not being abused now. Okay? So here you are, 11 years of age, you have had sexual exploration that you didn't want. Let's call it that, because even the word abuse is so loaded. And the reason I don't want to use that is because I don't want you to be the victim. I want you to be empowered. So you couldn't do anything about it then. And it's stored in your memory, in the black box recorder, as a reference to keep you safe. That's the job of the unconscious mind. That's all it does. It wants to keep you safe. So here we are, it's 20 years later, you get into a relationship with a loving person. But no. The intelligent idiot has held on to that reference of the sexual exploration at 11 years of age, and you cannot get intimate with the person you want to get intimate with because the intelligent idiot is saying, no. The alarm bells go off. The fight, flight, or freeze kicks off. Have you ever walked past a car where the alarm is going off, or past a house?
Yes.
And you go, well, the bloody alarm's going. Why is there alarm going? Okay. That's why the unconscious is the intelligent idiot, because it is still holding on to that reference, the memory of the abuse, in order to keep you safe. Now, here's, Stefan, what I'll try this on you and you see if this works, okay? So I want you to, for a moment, I just want you to imagine your front door, okay?
Yes.
I saw you doing it. Your eyes accessed, it looked up, and you Googled, and you saw a picture of your front door, okay?
Yes.
So now I want you to change the color of your front door.
Okay.
I want you to pretend it's Halloween. We celebrate Halloween here. I don't know if you do. Halloween, and there's pumpkins, and it's all orange, okay? Okay, now clear the screen, and I want you to put Santa in front of it. I want you to put snow around it, even though you probably never had snow, I don't know. And now, it's so interesting, Stefan, because I know this is audio, but your eyes have looked up. You are accessing up above, and you are looking at pictures in your mind.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. Your door is not in front of you. Your door is a memory. Your brain accessed the memory, the hologram of your door, and you changed it. The bottom line is, Stefan, we can change memories. So if you have, and you have said you have trauma, I don't exactly know what your trauma was. You said before we came on air that there was a murder.
Yeah.
The truth about it is, it's not happening now. Now, we can change those pictures.
Yes.
And when we change those pictures, we do not let go of the love of the parent or the person who was murdered.
We change for ourselves.
We let go of the trauma. So this is how I'm able to manage my father's death. When my father died, he was 72 years of age. Now, I could either wear black, go down to the river every day, go to the grave every day, talk about the sadness of the awfulness of the trauma, or I can honor. My father lived for 72 years. The last part of his life was only 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So where am I putting my focus? On the last 10 minutes of his life? Or what about all the other good times I had? What about the gift of love that he gave me that I can feel right here, right now in my heart, even though we don't need to be physically with people to keep the love. You know, you have people you love in your life, haven't you? Are they here in the room? So if they're not here in the room, does that mean there's no love? No. Love is created in our minds, in our hearts, in our souls. So I can either hold on to the sadness and trauma of my father's death, or I can honor the love, the gift of love that my father gave me. Because the truth is, the only constant in life is change. Nothing stays the same. Everybody's going to die. You're going to die. I'm going to die. Nothing stays static. So, okay, these awful things happened. I am not diminishing the awfulness of what happened. But let's honor life. My father died that you might live. If my father hadn't died, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
So
I don't know if you've heard the story. This is one I tell my clients of the Chinese farmer. So it's a quick story. Once upon a time, there was a Chinese farmer, and he had a horse, and the horse ran away. And the neighbors came and said, that's too bad. And he said, maybe. And the next day, the horse came back and brought 7 wild horses. And the neighbors came and said, that's really good. And the farmer said, maybe. Well, the day after that, his son got up on one of the wild horses, tried to break it, fell and broke his leg. And the neighbors came and said, that's too bad. The day after that, the conscription officers came to the village to take the son away, but they didn't take him because his leg was broken. So the moral of the story is that such are the intricacies of our lives that when woven together, the tapestry is so amazing that it's impossible to say what's good and what's bad. And when we apply that principle, and I'm not saying it's easy. I had an experience of it this week, yesterday. I had a personal experience of it yesterday, and I got to engage in the principles that I teach, and I know it's a challenge. But
I like this story that you said. I think it's one of my favorite stories that I like to hear. It's always about our mind or how we project meaning and give meaning to situations, but yet most often or many times that these meaning that we assign are not accurate. Thank you, Dierdre. I think it has been a great conversation. One of the biggest takeaway that after chatting with you is that the unconscious mind will want to keep us safe, and the lowest point is always a turning point. And I think one of the questions to ask ourselves would be, how could I look at this differently? And this will be a great question to ask every time that we hit the fence, or every time we are confronted by a difficult situation, or when the life throw curveballs at you, ask this question. And for those people who are listening who want to find out more about you, is there a website or a book that, as I know that you can share with us about the title of your website and the book again?
Okay, so my website is DierdreMaguire.com. That's DierdreMaguire.com, DierdreMaguire.com. The stress solution system is coming. It's not there yet, but it'll be there in a few months. The stresssolutionssystem.com. If you're listening to this down the line, I have 2 books currently. The first one is called Can You Believe It? Ordinary People, Extraordinary Stories. And it's available on Amazon. And the other book is called My On Purpose Planner, The Definitive Happy Journal. This is also on Amazon. And I have a YouTube channel. Okay. It's called Wisdom of Ireland, all one word. I have about 200 free videos there. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Dierdre. Thank you for the show. And thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Stefan, for what you're doing. You're helping so many people, and for stepping out of your pain and being so courageous. It's a privilege and an honor for you to have had me here today. So thank you so very much.
Thank you, Dierdre, again. Thank you. So for those who are listening, if you have any thoughts and comments, please reach out to me, and I wish you a great day ahead. Thank you very much.